Okay, guys, welcome back. So this next section is all about the settings, right? Or at least the general settings. And when I say general settings, it's because these top settings are going to be across any account we talk about or any campaign we talk about, whether it's be a search, display, YouTube, or even the app campaigns. These are just kind of the basic location settings, the language settings, and then also there's some secret settings in there that literally can save you tens of thousands of dollars if you don't have them selected right, or they can cost you those as well, right? So first off, when we dive into this campaign, I'm going to show you a couple different areas where you can actually adjust the settings. So first off, just picking up where we left off in our last video with the campaign, right? We have our web traffic campaign up here. We have the campaign name. Again, how you set this up and how your naming convention is completely up to you. I typically like to go, company name, what the network is, what kind of ad type it is, and what the targeting segment is, right? Those are kind of what I do. Again, it's completely up to you. The one thing I would just tell you to do is make them consistent, right? If you're doing it in one way today, make sure you're doing it the same way tomorrow and next week, just because a lot of this stuff, whenever you go back in to upload conversions back in, if you've changed or they're mislabeled or anything along those lines, they may not go back up in. Basically, you may not be able to take advantage of some of the uploading features to connect the offline conversions. So first of all, what we're going to look at is the network settings. So we've talked about this as well earlier in the last one, where with the normal search campaign, now they have search network or display. Now, depending on the goal you have set in here, like you may not actually, be able to adjust this, right? If you're just looking for like sales or leads specifically, it's not across all the campaigns, right? So if you get into the display campaign, for instance, which we have here, it's not going to show you what the same kind of features, right? You're not going to be able to select those search network and display network because it's already automatically defaulted to that. But you just want to be very mindful of this, because what these campaigns are, they're called search network display select, so SNDS. And it's something Google came out with a few years ago, and it's a novel idea to help consumers have an easier ability in managing their account by putting them all into one and allowing the algorithm to kind of disperse your budget. And it's not supposed to disperse past, I think it was a 70-30 split, where it would always do 70% on the search network and 30% on the display network. Unfortunately, with the bidding process, and if you are in really high cost industries, a lot of times it'll just dump everything into display. So you have to be very, very mindful of that. And again, the main thing that I'm always about, and you're going to hear me reiterate this throughout not only the settings video, but throughout the entire course, is I like to be in control and I don't like surprises, right? I like to make sure that there's nothing in the background, either through a rule or, Google automatically applying a recommendation or something to that effect that is going to affect how my budget is spent. So if I'm putting $1,000 in and I expect 70% of it to go to search and 30% go to display, and then all of a sudden it comes back a 50-50 split, that's going to upset me because that's not what I wanted, right? So I maintain control, and I always do the search network. Now you can include the search partners. This is such partner sites as like AOL, basically other search networks who've logged in or who have opted in to partner with Google. And it's even some Bing searches sometimes, and those there's kind of a weird overlap how all the search networks, when you were talking about Yahoo, Bing, and then Google, how on certain devices, they have certain rights, and some of them have the ability to actually show their ads there. So the next thing that we're going to go down into is some of these more advanced settings, such as the start and end date. You have the campaign URL and the dynamic search ad, which we're going to cover in the next lesson. But as we jump down into the locations, this is where, this is basically where your ads are going to be shown. So as you see, there's some default options in there, such as all countries and territories, United States and Canada, United States, and then you have some enter other locations, right? Where you can actually just put in, let's say we want to target California, and it'll pull up California for me. I can hit target, or I can even exclude it. We're going to go ahead and target it because everything else we have down here is excluded. You can also deselect things if you want at a time. Deselect them all if you want to do that. Primarily where I go though, just because it's a little bit more visual, is I always click on the advanced search, right? So the advanced search is going to give you a little bit more visual context to how your actual stuff is showing up. Okay. So you're going to be able to see, like if I select Washington as an exclusion, it's going to be redded out, right? If I do California as my targeting, I can do Los Angeles, right? Even though I have these individual kind of states selected, I can still target United States as a whole, right? And just for, honestly, a best practice, it's actually, if you can service the entire United States, it's, honestly best to target the entire United States, but then target the individual states as well. It's going to give you the greatest potential to show up. And if you target the United States, in addition to all the 50 states, you're also going to get some of this called unspecified traffic, which is just Google can't kind of figure it out because they either aren't logged in their browser. There's a lot of different variables, but it's honestly a lot of actual valuable traffic depending on what in kind of industry or product you're trying to put out there. So from here, again, you can see, you can add the individual countries. You have a nice little map where you can see, you can go in and switch out. Now, another option you can do is you can do bulk locations. So like, let's say I've got a list that I want to add in here. You can do, Texas, Utah, Arizona, but I just want to like copy and paste it and, basically throw it in here, right? Bam. Then what you can do is do that in the add locations by bulk, and you can target them all, or you can exclude them all, or you can target them individually if you want to select them individually, right? Let's go ahead and just target these as well. You're going to see they're going to pop up here on the screen. All right. Now, another feature that you have the capability to do, which is really nice, is let's say I want to also have I want to have this as a location in here so I can do some bid modifiers, which we'll talk about in a later lesson, that I want to put, target 20 miles around Phoenix, which is where we're located. So I can put a radius in there as well, and it'll target that as an individual area. And I can go back in and adjust, either down bid on Phoenix or up bid or do more customized features, which we'll cover again in later lessons once we kind of get into this. But the main thing about this is unfortunately, you can't do exclusions for radiuses. So if you want to, exclude a certain area around your office or something along those lines, it's better to do IP exclusions, which I'll cover in the next lesson as well, because those are just, you can't do radiuses basically is kind of the point of the whole, I guess, process. And then this is the location settings within you setting up a campaign. Now, if you have a campaign already set up, then you're going to see over here, we have all campaigns. We go into our health insurance campaign, and there's actually a menu down in this navigation bar called settings. All right, you click on settings and you go in here. Your location, languages, and networks, which we're covering in this lesson, are right here on this page, right in the middle, right? So you've got your networks where you can go back in. Let's say I want to opt into Search Networks partners now. Then I can go ahead and click that and hit save. All right. Never recommend opting in Display Network with its SNDS. Run separate display campaigns. As far as the locations, you've got them right in here. And now, one other handy thing about the locations, and this one setting will literally, it can either save you tens of thousands of dollars or cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And especially whenever you really need to be strategic with how this is displayed, right? But this setting, the location options, right? It's target people in or who show interest in your targeted location, recommended, right? They want you to spend money. Or you have this option, people in or regularly in your targeted location or people searching for your location, right? Like, there's a lot of different provinces, there's a lot of different countries that have similar names. If you're in Georgia and, you have very, very a likelihood that, there's somebody in Georgia that is searching for, let's say you sell toilet paper, right? I need toilet paper in Georgia, right? And the reality of it is Google does have the interpretation sometimes that that's still going to be relevant, even though they're halfway across the world, right? So that's what you really want to be mindful of. And I always start campaigns honestly off on people in or regularly in your targeted location, right? If you hit a cap on this where you just can't expand out anymore, you're spending all the money, you're hitting diminishing return, then maybe look into this setting. But to be quite honest with you, probably just go target, similar industries or like synonyms or something along those lines. Because this particular setting, it literally, in one of my last lead gen jobs, I came in, and this setting in the past 90 days had cost my boss over $25,000 in wasted traffic. So he had gotten traffic from all over the world, because we were targeting the entire United States, and we were targeting health insurance, and there was a lot of different variables within it that, caused it to show up. But there was literally $25,000 in lost revenue and cost, basically, that we incurred because of this one setting. So this, I always kind of stick to this when I'm setting up, even though Google recommends that. Okay. Now, as we go actually back into the account settings here, there's one thing that I want to show you that's very important as well. The locations is very, very valuable. We covered how to put them in and how to exclude them, but there's a higher level settings as well that actually appear in these accounts. Now, you're not going to see it within the actual setup of the campaign, right? It's nowhere in here where you can actually set these up. Okay. Where these are actually going to be is after you get this campaign going and it's in the account, whether it's paused or whether or not it's active, then you're going to get this dashboard, right? And you hit all campaigns, and it's going to give you two different options. Do I want to look at my campaign settings, or do I want to look at my account settings? And first of all, the one thing that I want to tell everybody to do after you create your campaign, again, is if it's active, go ahead and pause it so you can make some changes to it. But go into this account settings, right? Click on all campaigns, click on account settings, and slide all the way down here to account suggestions, right? These account suggestions, it's change how ad suggestions are applied for this customer. So these account suggestions are not always in your best interest. They in detail sometimes about putting in a bunch of keywords, and those keywords honestly could be really, really broad, or they could be completely out of context to what your particular strategy is. It also accounts for opting into different networks, changing ad text, putting in negatives. So they're not always very valuable. And there's an actual entire module at the end of the course on how to use the recommendations tab properly in order to actually make you money and put money back in your pocket rather than take money out of your pocket. And the worst thing that can possibly happen is for things to happen that take money out of your pocket without you being aware of them. And that's what can happen within this particular setting, because what it'll do is it'll automatically apply ad suggestions after 14 days. Go ahead and don't automatically apply ad suggestions. You click that and hit save. Okay. That is one of the most important settings within this account. Now, to find the settings menu once you've actually created the campaigns is, again, you just click on your campaign, and you actually have an entire settings menu in the navigation bar over here. Okay? Now, just like within setting up the campaigns, and right below the locations, you have the ability to select the language, right? So all you have to do is basically, select whatever your native language is, or you can put two of them in here if you want to. Right? You hit save. It's very similar, the same thing when you're setting up the campaigns. It looks almost the exact same, right? It's a drop-down menu that says languages. You hit that, you do Portuguese. And it's going to be in there, right? So that's how you change the language settings within the account. Now, the thing that to keep in mind about the language settings is these are whatever the browser setting is on any potential prospect's computer, right? So it doesn't matter where they are. Let's say you were targeting the United States and they're sitting right in, Phoenix, Arizona, but their browser language is set to Spanish, then it's not going to show ads from this particular campaign to that customer because their browser settings are English. They're misaligned. And the thing about AdWords, and I'm going to teach you this throughout the targeting lessons and when we get into display especially, is there's a lot of different pieces to how these customers are targeted, right? There's the keywords, there's sometimes the audience, but there's also the location, there's your bids of what you're willing to pay, there's your languages, and there's also your locations. And all of those have to combine and they all have to match in order for you to be able to be shown to any potential prospect that's out there. So before we dive into the advanced settings here and we go into some really detailed stuff, go back and review some of the terms that we went through, just because of you really need to understand how all of these different principles are going to align within these settings. Because again, when you're targeting this customer, picture a Venn diagram, right? And I'm going to show you a Venn diagram later on where we talk about keywords and audiences and display, but the Venn diagram actually is much more complex, right? Because you honestly have your languages, you have your targeting, you have your network, you have your bids, you have your actual targeted methods in there, like audiences, keywords, and all this. And all of those are like one nice little big circle that are all wrapped together, overlapping. But if the only place that you target is right there in the middle, is where the only places your ads are actually going to be able to be shown, right? So keep that in mind as you're going down through their settings, and just make sure that your settings are matching what your particular target audience are, and also what the goal that we're trying to accomplish. Again, if we're a travel agent, we're probably not trying to sell a whole lot of travel packages to people inside Texas, right? And depending on, let's say you have you have Mexican tours down in Cancun, right? But it's an English language tour. You're probably not going to want to target a lot of people in Germany that only speak German, right? So you want to keep all of those things in mind as you go down through this account, is keep these core settings whenever you're creating your ads, whenever you're creating your targeting, and make sure that they're all aligning so one of these pieces isn't out of whack. Because if one of them's out of whack, honestly, your ads won't deliver. And all your nice little hard work will just be literally, you have to go back and troubleshoot and try and figure it out. So now let's jump into the advanced settings. And we're going to dive into much more about the bidding and budgeting, how fast and how much your people are exposed to your particular product. We're also going to dive in some real neat tracking stuff to teach you how to do some ultimate URLs where you can really identify and get really, really granular with your content. So congratulations on making it through the first part of the settings. If you have any questions, again, watch the video back through. These videos are yours for life, so you can always reference back to them if you ever get lost. And thanks a lot for taking the course, and we'll see you in the next lesson.